My husband came home from a week-long business trip, and I greeted him at the door, only to discover a little girl who was about a year old in his arms. I immediately asked who this baby was, and his reply made me feel like I was struck in the back of the head with a metal pipe.
We couldn't make a baby together, so I went and did you the favor of adopting a baby for us. You don't have a problem with this, do you?
I was obviously surprised at the sudden offer. I just couldn't accept something like that. When I asked my husband who the baby's biological parents were, he got furious and told me it was none of my business, and attempted to force me to accept that we were going to adopt a baby instead of conceive one ourselves. I was obviously strongly opposed to the adoption, and when I pressured him to answer all the questions I had, he later gave into his fury and revealed a shocking truth that plunged all my love for him into an abyss of eternal darkness. This is the story of how my husband's strange behavior over the course of around 2 years eventually culminated with quite an unexpected course of action, and how the truth behind his behavior caused me to exact my revenge by divorcing him, leaving him penniless too. My name is Juliette Vallée, and I'm a 32-year-old medical assistant at a local hospital. My French-sounding name comes from my father's family, who are from Quebec up in Canada, and I was raised by very stubborn parents who always spoke their minds for the greater good. And about my job, when I was young, I was kindly treated by an elderly assistant at a hospital after I'd gotten a nasty gash in my arm after falling into a bush from a trampoline in the backyard. So, after graduating from college, I started working as a medical assistant. I started working at the hospital when I was 22, and this marks my 10th year of my career. I met my future husband, Riordan, 6 years ago when I was taking a break from my work and found a confused guy in the hallway of the hospital. That was none other than Riordan, and he was having trouble figuring out where he had to go for his first appointment. I told him where the specific clinic was, and he thanked me, left to get back to my lunch. After work that day, I stopped by a bar on my way home, and the man I bumped into, sitting next to me, was the same Riordan whom I met at the hospital. We had a very sparkling conversation, probably because we were both a little intoxicated already. And as the night progressed, we went to another bar, which he frequented, and had another drink together. That night was quite literally the most fun I'd had in a while at that point, and we exchanged contact information before bidding each other goodnight. We kept in touch regularly, going out for lunch or dinner when we both had time. We had a lot of fun when we talked, and I learned he was just an ordinary office man working in the headquarters of a local company. But we really didn't care about each other's occupations. As we talked about deep topics, we grew ever more attracted to each other, and the progression of our relationship was natural. The relationship blossomed into something wonderful, and we eventually got married. After a year of enjoying our newlywed life together, I wanted to have a baby, so I started preparing for getting pregnant. But no matter how hard I tried, Riordan and I couldn't conceive children. I became suspicious and decided to go to the hospital to have it checked out. That's when I found out that I was infertile. I was so depressed, partly because I wanted to show my parents and in-laws their first grandchild as soon as possible, but also because I wanted a child more than anything else in the world. I often tended to young children in my line of work, and talking to them, seeing them smile, hearing them laugh, and sending them home all healthy and better made my maternal instincts yearn for my own. And the hope of getting pregnant was so strong. To have it all destroyed in one fell swoop like that, let me tell you, one wonders if they'll ever bounce back from the trauma. I came home from the hospital and talked to Riordan. I was so nervous to tell him the truth, but I knew I had to. What should I do, honey? I don't think I can have a baby.
Don't worry, Juliette. We'll work together to get through this. I'll be with you every step of the way.
Thank you, honey.
Of course. We're husband and wife now. It's during tough times like this that supporting each other is especially important for both of us.
Oh, Riordan, I'll do my best to improve the situation, honey. And mark my words, we'll get a baby, one way or another. Hopefully by me getting pregnant, though, LOL. In retrospect, that joke proved to be extremely ironic. Fast forward 4 whole years of infertility treatment. The reality that I couldn't have a baby very easily made me feel completely discouraged many times. It was so bad at times that even if I forced myself to, I couldn't be genuinely happy for my friends when they got pregnant. And I hated myself so much for being that kind of person. Still, I wanted to be the mother of my husband's child, so I kept at the infertility treatment, staying patient and determined, desperately fighting the anxiety in my heart. One day, after years of determined work towards improvement, I went to the hospital again to consult with the doctor. And this time, the results were very satisfying. Thanks to the drug therapy, the possibility of conceiving a child had improved substantially. After being told these results, I tried to seduce Riordan that day. But his reply was extremely curt, and this immediately made me suspicious of something. I didn't know what it was, but something seemed off.
I'm sorry. I'm not in the mood for this. It's not the right time.
What do you mean it's not the right time?
This is a very dire and stressful time for me. I'd like you to give me all the rest I need at night from now on, honey.
What's happening, Riordan, exactly? If it's something truly important, you ought to tell me. I think I can help, and even if I can't, I think just telling me about it will help make you feel better.
It's...
Riordan Valet, I must remind you that you can talk to me about anything. You said so yourself, I believe, that as we are married, we're meant to support each other, especially during the hardest times, right? We've always supported each other up until now, haven't we? Why begin to stop now? Don't worry, honey, just tell me what's going on. Perhaps my words consoled him quite a little. His tense muscles relaxed a little, and he slowly began to tell me the situation with a mysterious look on his face.
Actually, my workplace's performance is getting pretty bad, and it may go bankrupt within the next few years.
Bankrupt? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I am. Literally everyone is talking about it. They actually offered to let people resign with a sum of money to help them out with their life while they looked for another job. But practically no one quit, so they're going through a major restructuring.
Restructuring?
Because they can't afford the personnel costs due to its poor performance. They're going to start to lay a bunch of us off. So that's why it's a terrible time to be thinking about this, Juliet. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to lie. I thought he was going to come up with some lame excuse because of some underlying suspicious motive that I had to spend some time trying to discover myself. I honestly didn't expect such a solid reason for being so pessimistic about conceiving a baby, and I couldn't blame him for his slumped shoulders and glum demeanor. It may be difficult to be in that kind of mood at a time like this, for sure. I gently cuddled up to the dejected Riordan. I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
No, it's okay. I know you're trying hard to get fertility treatment, and I know you want a child pretty badly. Believe me when I tell you I want one too. But under the circumstances, even if we do have a baby, you know...
I do know. I know you're worried about your financial situation. But don't worry. I'm making enough money so that when the time comes, I can take care of you. I can support you alone, without a baby, for a while.
You're a real trooper. You know that? Thank you. So much.
Of course. We're husband and wife now. It's during tough times like this that supporting each other is especially important for both of us. Riordan smiled happily, as if my words relieved him. But I still wondered if it was because of this anxiety that he began to do some strange things. By strange, I don't mean suspicious. I mean plain unorthodox. Up until maybe 20 months ago, he used to go away from home twice a month on holidays to visit his ancestors' graves. While strange indeed, I merely thought he was just a good man who cared about his ancestors and the legacy they left behind. But for a year and a half, he had ceased to visit the graves. He did mention a big restructuring of the company, and he must have been very anxious about the poor management of his workplace. It must have been very stressful for him to work, not knowing when he would be fired. And that's why I later said to Riordan, maybe now you can visit the graves again.
Visit the graves?
You haven't been able to go there recently, right? To meet your ancestors? Isn't that because of your workplace having some trouble?
Yeah.
If you're about our family life together, honey, don't be. I have enough money saved up to support you if the company suddenly goes bankrupt. I think you should go see your ancestors. People will start to worry about you if you suddenly stop coming after being so consistent for so long.
Maybe. Yeah. But you know what? I'm not in the mood.
Not in the mood?
Because, it's strange to go all the way out here at this time of the year, isn't it? Anyway, it doesn't matter now.
Holy smokes. What was with this change in attitude? During the time he used to visit the graveyard every other week, my physical and mental health were both rather vulnerable as a consequence of the infertility treatment notwithstanding. He would say that cherishing one's ancestors is more important than anything else, and that I must visit the graveyard without fail. So, why was he treating his own ancestors with such disrespect as of now? I suddenly found myself suspecting Riordan of something he wasn't telling me, but I couldn't question him, and the months passed. Then one day, he went on a business trip and was away from home for a week. I wondered if it was possible for a company that had been in near bankruptcy for several years due to poor performance to give him a 1-week business trip. I decided to ask him about it. Hey, where are you going on this business trip?
Why, to Florida, Juliet.
Where in Florida?
Why do you want to know about that?
Can't a wife at least want to know where her husband is going? That's how things work in marriages, honey.
It's none of your business where I go on business trips.
That's not true. What if something happened while you're away? Like an accident or something like that? You could tell me in case of an emergency.
My God, you're so annoying.
Why are you so goddamn reluctant to tell me? You know you're going on this business trip because of work, right?
Why else would I go? For God's sake. Look, I have to get ready, so don't interrupt me.
Riordan! I've been feeling uneasy ever since my husband told me about his business trip. Why did he stubbornly refuse to tell me where he was going? Was this trip really for work? I didn't want to doubt him, but my anxiety was sending me on an emotional roller coaster for a while, until the day he came home from his business trip.
I'm home.
Welcome home. Wait, who's this little girl, Riordan? When he came in through the front door, I discovered he was holding a little girl whom I didn't recognize. She was cradled in his arms and stared at me curiously with her big round eyes.
She's the daughter of some relatives of mine. Ain't she the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? She's only 1 year old.
Yes, well, she's very cute. But are you going to keep her for a short time or something?
No, I'm not going to keep her for a short time. I'm going to keep her for her whole life. Think of adopting her.
Adoption? What are you talking about? Out of the blue. Riordan's sudden statement made me feel like I was struck in the back of the head with a metal pipe. Adoption of a relative's child? What in the world of Warcraft sorcery was he talking about? In spite of my confusion, Riordan proceeded with his story in high spirits.
My relatives couldn't live with this child due to unavoidable circumstances. That's why I offered to take her in. It's a pity that this girl's all alone, isn't it?
Wait, I know you feel sorry for her, and believe me when I tell you, I also feel sorry for her. But who the hell are these relatives from whom you were offered to take her?
Relatives are relatives, Juliet. Nothing too important.
Nothing too important, my ass. What are their names? What are these unavoidable circumstances that you were talking about?
You don't need to know all those details to take the child in. Juliet, listen. If we don't take her in, she'll be all alone so early in life. Don't you feel sorry for her if that happens?
Yes, I do feel sorry for her. But I just can't accept a girl whom I don't even know where she comes from.
I'm telling you, she's the daughter of a few relatives of mine.
And I'm asking you who these relatives of yours are. Why do you insist on keeping that piece of information a damn secret?
Hey, don't yell. You'll scare her.
Riordan said and started to nurse the toddler in his arms. I was so annoyed that he literally didn't answer any of my questions, and I continued to pressure him into answering all the questions I had. Don't be so ambiguous. You can't just decide something as important as adopting a child in this manner without consulting your wife about it beforehand. That is one thing, and it's something completely different when you outright refuse to tell her who the child really belongs to.
A child of relatives is a child of relatives. What more could you possibly freaking want? You don't need to know any more than that.
Tell me you're not serious. How can anyone with at least a smidge of common sense accept a potential family member without knowing who they are at all? As I argued with the most infuriating man in the world, who kept blurting out how unimportant the identity of the baby truly was, the little sweetheart started to cry. She said the word dada. And once I heard that word, I wasn't going to forget it. Not even in 1,000 years would I ever forget that one word. What does she mean by dada, Riordan? Explain it all to me, or so help me, tonight will be a very long night indeed.
What the frick are you talking about? She did not say dada. You misheard her.
Not true. I clearly heard dada. Why is this toddler calling you her father, Riordan Valet?
Oh, shut up. You want to know so badly? Fine. I'll frickin' tell you, goddammit.
My pressuring eventually got his patience to its limit, and he finally got upset and started yelling at the top of his lungs, telling me everything. Firstly, the bi-weekly visits to the cemetery twice a month, that was all a lie, and that he had been in fact visiting his lover on the days he was away from me. The woman's name was Mariah, and her relationship with Riordan had been a thing for quite a long time, nearly 2 years in fact, long enough that she bore his daughter last year. So, it turned out that Riordan and his lover decided to have the child after much discussion. Getting her pregnant was the easy part. The hard part was coming to grips with the fact that she only had a part-time job and far from enough money to provide the newborn with a decent life. Its life was going to be poor and a bit miserable. So, while it pained them greatly to come to that conclusion, they decided on an abortion. However, before Mariah had her abortion, she disappeared from Riordan's life, and he could not get in touch with her anymore. That is, until a week prior to Riordan coming home from his business trip, which was also a lie, by the way. Mariah suddenly called him out of the blue and told a very surprised and concerned Riordan that she'd cut off all contact because she was going to get the abortion as planned, but couldn't go through with it and changed her mind. She gave birth to the child on her own, and she tried raising the child by herself, but after a year, it proved to be far too hard for her alone. She reached out to Riordan for help, and the week he was gone, he'd gone to see her to talk about things and make a good decision. Until Mariah's phone call, Riordan had no idea that he had a daughter. He thought she was destroyed. He lied to his company saying that he had gone to his parents' funeral down in Florida. And he lied to me saying that his workplace had sent him on a business trip to Florida. For 1 week, he stayed in a hotel, taking care of his daughter Gabriella, and went to see Mariah every day. The story made complete sense to me, because the reason why he hadn't gone on those visits to his ancestors' grave for a year and a half is that Riordan also went to see his lover, who lived nearby up until she went incommunicado. Even if he went to visit the grave, he would not have been able to see her, so he didn't have any damn point in going there at all anymore. But let's consider this under a different spotlight. While I was undergoing fertility treatment to potentially welcome a new family member with the help of my husband, the same husband was embracing another woman he loved dearly enough that he would take her child under his wing. He'd been telling me that we should support each other even through the darkest of times, which to me was a seemingly endless fertility treatment. And all the while he was pegging another woman without ever properly dealing with me and my infertility at all. The moment I realized this, I was helplessly depressed and angry. I suppressed the feeling that I was about to burst into tears and said to Riordan in a shaky voice, "Thank you for telling me."
Well then, glad you came to your senses.
Now I understand clearly. I can't even live together with the child of the husband who cheated on me, much less raise her.
What are you saying? You would abandon such a small child like this? Some wife and mother you would be. You frickin' piece of shit. That's why you can't get pregnant, bitch.
Excuse me?
If you can't love a child, that alone would render human scum like you infertile. You wanted a child so badly, and I brought one here for you. You're gonna have one more family member, just as you hoped we would. What is it you said? Mark my words, we'll get a baby, one way or another. Well, now you have, and I don't expect you to complain for shit about it.
These words sent my anger over the boiling point, and I exploded. It was a moment when even the passionate love of hundreds of thousands years could turn stone cold in but an instant. I had no regrets in my heart when I came to the conclusion, right then and there, that I didn't need this lousy person in my life anymore. I said clearly, in a deadly quiet, trembling voice, "We're done."
What? Juliet, what are you saying?
I don't feel I'm obliged to become this child's mother, nor do I think I will ever feel obliged to be one. I'm done with you. All the work I put in us, in our future, turned out to be meaningless. We're done.
You can't leave me. What are you gonna do with your life?
Have you forgotten I have a good job? I told you I'm making a living decent enough to take care of you and myself. And I have my savings from high school too. I can survive without you. Easy peasy, nice and cheesy, Riordan.
Wait a minute. Anything but divorce. Please?
And what are you talking about, Mr. Valet?
I got a call from my boss today that the company is in its final days. Literally. I could lose my job any day now. If we get divorced, I won't be able to make a living to take care of Gabriella.
So what? What does it matter to me if you can't make ends meet?
We've been so supportive of each other, Juliet. How could you be so cruel right now?
Well. Looky who's talking now. I was freaking struggling with infertility and working my damn ass off to make ends meet so that the chances of me getting pregnant would improve. And what were you doing? Having a grand old time with a dance with no pants with Mistress Mariah. What kind of supportive marriage is that, eh? You've got to be kidding me.
Calm down, Juliet. Please. I'm sorry about the affair.
You don't frickin' say my name, Mr. Valet. What am I supposed to do with you with your flimsy frickin' apology? Forgive you? Over my damn dead body. There are some things in this world that no amount of apology will ever make one forget and forgive. I don't need you in my life anymore. Goodbye. Riordan, still holding the sobbing Gabriella, collapsed on his knees as I delivered the final blow, and I proceeded to call my in-laws. When I told them what had happened, they hightailed to my house. And as soon as Mr. Valet, my father-in-law, saw his son, he forced him to the ground on all fours and slapped him across the face as hard as he could. Literally, what a bastard like him deserved for what he freaking did. When Riordan's face was painfully swollen, the beating stopped, and my parents-in-law got down on their knees and apologized to me, crying as they begged for forgiveness to them.
It was our fault for making a mistake in raising our son.
They told me that they would take back their son and Gabriella, and that they would take care of the toddler themselves. Hearing those words, I felt relieved that the child was in good hands, and I was able to divorce my husband. Since then, Riordan has lived on his family's farm, and he seems to be spending his days without freedom. Gabriella seems to be well taken care of by my ex-in-laws, and she seems to be growing fast. I am furious at Riordan for cheating on me, but the child is innocent and has absolutely zero fault in this whole thing. I genuinely hope she will grow up healthy and full of love from her grandparents. As for me, I'm spending my time working hard as a medical assistant. I have a long life ahead of me, so I'm going to make the most of the time I have and make it a life full of happiness, friendship, and love. Wish me luck.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? Alright, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.